Here at Spoonful of Strength, we want to make this podcast interactive. We want to hear your stories and we want you involved in our conversations. Follow Spoonful of Strength on Instagram, where we will post questions throughout the week. Your answers may be shared on our podcast. Do you have a story to share? Send us a message on Spoonful of Strength on Instagram with your health journey, and we may interview you on this show. Welcome to Spoonful of Strength, a podcast for people with chronic illness and the ones who love them, where we talk all things chronic. Here's your host, Rachel and Tina. Welcome to Spoonful of Strength. We are happy to be here today. Tina, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. I just had PT this morning, and they've added some new exercises this week, so I'm definitely feeling it a little bit more. How about you?
I have started some nebulizer treatments, and so I'm a little bit raspy today, but I am here and ready to get this episode underway. We're excited to talk about some myths and misconceptions about chronic illness. So things that people think about chronic illness in general, and kind of discussing a few of those. So now, Tina, you actually have the definition of chronic illness.
I am on the cdc.gov website, so Center for Disease Control here in the United States, and they define chronic diseases as conditions that last 1 year or more and require ongoing medical attention or limit activities of daily living, or both. So it could be a combination of it lasts more than 1 year or it's impacting your daily activity.
So we're going to go through 5 different myths and just talk about them a little bit. So do you want to start with the first one?
Yeah, sure. One of the biggest myths that seems to be out there is that all chronic illnesses are always visible.
And disability on top of that too, is that somebody can be disabled without being in a wheelchair.
Exactly. Yeah. Or, if you don't look sick, you don't look sick. So, it must not, you must be fine.
Right. And we know that that's totally wrong. I mean, we all fight chronic illness, and you see it on memes and things on Instagram of just the fact of, you see the pictures of the iceberg and what people see, and then everything underneath and everything like that. So that's a hard one. I know for myself that I have a handicap placard on my car, and I always wonder, I use a cane, but in the back of my head, I'm always like, are they thinking I bought this off eBay or something, and, I'm not really handicapped and all of that stuff. And it can be a struggle to worry about what other people are thinking, because on the outside, a lot of times I don't look disabled.
We always ask on our Instagram some feedback on the upcoming topic. So, Michelle Robinson says, we are always, if we don't look sick,
then we feel great. Yeah. And that's definitely not the case. Fatigue in itself, is one of those that sometimes you don't see it on the outside, or cognitive difficulties. You don't see that sometimes just by looking at somebody.
And also, I feel like the longer that we deal with a chronic illness, the better we hide our symptoms.
Especially like at family functions. I think sometimes you go in there, you're excited to see everybody. And so, everybody thinks you're fine and you act fine. And then what I find is after the party's over, then it's like, I'm down and out. And sometimes you put on a good face because you don't want your family to worry. Sometimes you put on a good face just because you don't want to attract attention, different things like that. But Have you ever had that where you just kind of, especially like during your cancer treatment, where you just kind of sucked it up, put on a happy face, and then kind of didn't let people into how you were really feeling?
Yeah, I definitely did, and I know I still do, even with these, with the back issues that I'm dealing with right now too, is, you just part of it too, kind of is if is the energy. Like if you're going to a function and you are like, oh, it's so nice to be out of the house and it's nice to have time with family and friends, then you may actually put out of your mind, you're able to kind of put out of your mind how you're feeling. And then once it's all over and done with, that's when you realize that how badly
Yeah,
you actually feel.
right. It all hits you. And Madre Autoimmune said is basically saying the same thing that we've been talking about is if we look good, we're fine. So moving on to the next myth we want to talk about is that people with chronic illness are lazy and unmotivated. And that one just drives me nuts because I think out of everybody, people with chronic illness are some of the strongest people that I know. And just doing all these interviews with people, I mean, it's just been amazing. But that is a myth that people get labeled as, oh, she's in a wheelchair. She looks fine. She's just being lazy. And what are your thoughts on that one?
I do think that there's people that feel that way, that they're maybe taking advantage of their illness to get out of things, get out of doing things just because they don't want to do things, or yeah, I mean, I personally struggle with the days that I am having a bad day and rest more because I do feel lazy. So when I do
Yeah.
that, but I know that I need to, but to have other people kind of be judgy makes it more difficult, I think, for some people to feel like they should take the time to rest when they need to because they're worried about the perception of other people.
Mhm. Yeah, I do that a lot, especially with my husband. I'm like, yeah, he comes home from work and he sees I'm exhausted or I've had a really bad symptom day. And after dinner, I take my breathing treatment and he'll start cleaning up the dishes and I feel guilty. And so I'm like, oh, I don't want him to think that I'm been lazy all day because the dishes never got done. And it's a mind game. And I think a lot of times we put that on ourselves as well of just wanting to feel healthy and not wanting our disease to limit what we can do.
Mhm. It's hard to lay on the couch and rest when you need to, when you're looking there going, oh, that entertainment stand needs to be dusted, or the
Mm-hmm.
floors need to be swept, but you need to take that day to rest, and you got to
Yeah.
reach the point. It's hard to reach that point of being able to go, you know what? It'll still be there tomorrow when hopefully I'm feeling better, and then I'll dust it. And lazy just
Mm-hmm.
seems very judgmental,
Yeah.
and and when we are saying that to ourselves, then we're being judgmental. We're not, that's not being very loving and compassionate to yourself,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is just as detrimental as, if not more so, than somebody else saying that they think you're lazy. So
Yeah. In talking with my doctors and things, I think I've messed up my shoulder because putting too much weight on my cane. And so putting too much weight
oh,
on my cane means that I probably need something a little bit more. And so I'm in the process probably over the next couple months of realizing, is this something that I need a electric wheelchair just in the house to reserve my spoons? Or do I need a rollator so that I'm not putting all that pressure on my shoulder and things like that? And that can
right.
get really hard, with mobility aids. And going from being able to walk on your own to having to use a cane. And of course, the reason is all to keep us safe. You know, I've had a few falls in the last couple months, and it's all about keeping us safe, but it's still hard to have to make those decisions
Right.
as well. So,
I'm sure it's tough to kind of make a transition to something that's more supportive, but feeling like it's
mhm.
also admitting that that's something that you need.
Yeah, yeah,
Since
um,
just like I always
definitely.
joke saying that, I started reading or started wearing reading glasses, and the problem when I talk to friends and they're like, oh, I think I need them. I'm like, hold out as long as you can, because once you start using them, you become so dependent on it, and that's
Yeah,
just something, simple as,
yeah.
reading glasses, but, transitioning to from a cane to a wheelchair, that's a big step. So,
We thought we'd take a brief pause in our podcast to enjoy what I call a mini mindful moment. Now, mindfulness is, if you're not familiar with the concept, that is the practice of just being present in this particular moment in time. We're not thinking about things that have happened in the past. We're not thinking of things that are coming up. We're simply in this here and now. So I encourage you to join us on a little mindful moment here as I guide you through how to quiet your mind. One of my favorite techniques of that is simply become focused on my breath. So if you settle in, close your eyes, try to quiet your mind, and simply focus on taking a nice deep breath in through your nose, feeling it all the way down from your diaphragm all the way up, and hold it. And then release that breath through the mouth. One big, long breath out. And there should be no other thoughts going through your mind. Just simply focus on breathing in. Nice deep breath in through the nose and hold it. And deep breath out through your mouth, releasing all that tension in your body. Feeling yourself connected to nothing more than your body and your mind. You hear any outside noises, just simply push them away. Only concentrate on that breath. Deep breath in, hold it, and a nice long breath out. And if you find your mind starting to wander, just bring it back to focusing on nothing more than the process of those deep breath in all the way through the very bottom of your pit of your stomach, all the way up into your lungs. Nice and deep breath, and hold it. And a nice deep breath out. Simply quieting your mind and focusing only on those nice deep breaths in and a long breath out. And then take just a couple seconds, a few more breaths on your own. I won't guide you through these. If you find your mind starting to wander, just bring it right back to just focusing on the breath and nothing more. Give you a couple seconds to do a few deep breaths. And on your last exhale, nice deep exhale, and open your eyes and come back to the present moment and join us back on the remainder of our podcast.
Have you ever heard of dynamic disability, Tina?
I have not. What is that?
So, dynamic disability is a disability which tends to fluctuate in severity. So, people with, like a dynamic disability may have days where they don't need any mobility aids. And then may have days where they need a rollator or days where they, need a wheelchair to get around. And so somebody that kind of fluctuates and it's all about being safe and saving your spoons, I'm sure, but that's something I just came upon actually through Instagram. The idea of it is that you basically, how you're feeling that day is you choose the mobility aid that fits how your health is going that day.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah, it really does. And it was just something I learned this week. But
I'm wondering if I'd be curious for those that do that. If they've run into issues of like, oh, well, yesterday she was in a scooter and today she's walking around with a cane, so she must have been thinking,
Yeah. Yep.
Another Instagram follower, K Fo Show, says, that some people, they think that it's easy on us with chronic illness because we don't work or we're exaggerating our symptoms so that we don't have to work.
And I think about it like this, people with chronic illness are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no days off, no breaks, because our job is taking care of ourselves. Our job is managing symptoms. Our job is going to doctor's appointments. Our job is just managing this beast that we call chronic illness. And so that, people think that if you're not working, that you have all this time to spare to do whatever you want. And that's certainly not the case.
Yeah. I think it also comes down to a quality of life issue too. Yeah. So, if your disability only gives you so much energy and you're working 40 hours a week, then, and that's what's the point of, plus your commute times, then, and that's all you can do, then, where's the quality of life? There's that quote that says, I'd rather work to live than live to work. And so, yeah, it's all about that balance of.
Yeah. And unfortunately, some people have to work when they probably physically shouldn't. And that's
right.
Hard as well.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to our third myth, which is that chronic illnesses are all the same. That if you have a chronic illness, that your story or your life is the same as the next person. And I think that's completely on the opposite side, because even people with the same illness can have completely different symptoms, can have different disabilities and things like that. So that's definitely something that is nowhere near being true.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Even amongst the people that I know that also have fibromyalgia will often talk about, the symptoms, and I may have something, I may struggle in a completely different way that somebody else does.
Yeah. And even, we find a lot with people with chronic illnesses, there's a lot of people that have more than one. So it's like you're mixing up a little bit of MS and a little bit of fibromyalgia and a little bit of of IBD and all these different things. And so everybody's picture doesn't look the same because they may have other things going on. And even if they only have one illness, they're probably a lot different than the next.
Right.
And so definitely, I mean, chronic illnesses are just a range of symptoms, a range of disabilities. But obviously, the reason we created this podcast is to find that even though they are widely different, that we all are fighters. We all have to deal with the pain of the chronic illness and the fatigue on a daily basis, and we can all relate to each other. We can respect each other, knowing that even if we have the same illness, that we may be looking at a person who is completely different than how we handle the illness.
Right. Absolutely.
So here's a big one that I found, is that mental illness is not a chronic illness. And this one hits me because I completely disagree with that, because mental illness can be something that you can live with the rest of your life. And sometimes it's a constant. Sometimes you'll need medication or other therapies. And sometimes, you may have times where you feel good and then, it flares up, but it is definitely under the umbrella of chronic illness. I mean, don't you think, Tina?
Oh, absolutely. I have a good friend that has bipolar, and I can definitely, like, I can tell when that person is struggling versus when everything is, even, on a is more level. And I know that it's not uncommon for them to need their medications tweaked a bit here and there, depending on what's going on in their life and how they're doing. So it's definitely a chronic illness that takes some serious management to keep you as level as possible.
Yeah. And even some of the things, we talk about as far as, fatigue can come with depression and some other mental illnesses, or just, being that person that says, no, I don't feel like going out today because you're struggling mentally, and having to maybe miss events because your mental illness is, not doing so well. Some people with mental illness, you don't see that sometimes on the outside. And so it's, there's a lot of things that go under this big chronic illness umbrella. And I think mental illness is definitely one of those. And a lot of times people struggle with mental illness just because of their physical health.
The chronic illness that they're dealing with. Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the worst things that people, a lot of people who don't suffer from a chronic illness in general, but even, when they're struggling mentally, is, oh, you just need to think positive or look on the bright side and things like that. And I'm a very positive thinker. I promote positive, the positive thoughts and things like that, but that you can't think the struggles away with happy thoughts. So, it's a, that's not the best advice to give somebody that does struggle.
Yeah. Go get some sunshine, go outside. Yeah. And
for me, I know that helps. I have a very strong nature connection and sunshine. So I know when I'm struggling, if I can go out for a little hike or something like that, that does uplift me. But I'm not saying that that's what everybody needs to do, because everybody finds joy in different things. And, you just need to, to patch into what brings you joy to hopefully help a bit during those times of struggle. But a lot of people don't understand that you can't just happy thought it away.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely something that can be a daily struggle, and we definitely know that mental illness and um, some of the chronic illnesses we suffer from can go hand in hand. So we will have, I'm sure, a couple episodes we're thinking of about mental illness. So we really would like to be able to talk a little bit more about mental illnesses in episodes to come. So look out for that. But we did want to touch on that because that is a myth that is definitely out there.
Did you know Spoonful of Strength is not just a podcast? We have an Instagram page called Spoonful of Strength where you can see clips of our upcoming episodes, learn about different illnesses, and we share other people's stories. We also have an Etsy shop where you can shop for clothing such as t-shirts and sweatshirts and hoodies. You can find candles and mugs and tumblers and blankets. You can find it all. We support all chronic illnesses, and the great thing is, if you find a t-shirt in our shop for multiple sclerosis, we can change that for lupus or Ehlers-Danlos or any other illness that you need. Everything is customizable in our shop. Use the code PODCAST for 20% off your entire order.
The myth that chronic illness is constant suffering. And that's not always the case as well.
I definitely have days. Yeah, you have days where you may feel good, so you're able to be more productive or do things that you aren't able to do on those flare-up days. So depending on what the illness is, you may not you may have a great day, or you may have a great number of days, and then all of a sudden it flares back up and then you're not having great days.
Yeah. I think everybody has their own like scale depending on not everybody's a 0 to 10. EDS and me _RC on Instagram, she said a myth is that her baseline can't be a 7. So from my understanding on that is that she lives at a 7, kind of as her baseline. And I think that looking and saying everybody's chronic illness is the same, there may be people that have days where they're a 0 and they have absolutely no pain at all, and days that are an 8 and their scale might be a little bit wider than the other person's. For me, I would say my best days are still probably a 3 or a 4, just with everything I'm dealing with. But I've learned that my 3 and 4 are good days for me. And everybody's scale is a little bit different in that perspective. And so people thinking that, chronic illness is just, you're in bed 24/7 and you're always at an 8, and, all of that is not true. And we can have good days, and those days will look different from one person to the next.
Yeah. And it's also important to, on those lower scale days, to not push to the point of the next day is an 8. It's like yesterday was a 2 and I got so much done, I shouldn't have done so much. And then it's an 8. Like, I think that's what I'm doing. Like, I'm dealing with that right now. I was feeling pretty good over the weekend, and we did a lot of weeding and campsite cleanup at our seasonal camp spot. And I think I overworked one of my muscles along my left shoulder blade. So I'm like, it took a couple days to catch up, but I definitely just threw myself into an 8 pain scale for the last couple days, just in that shoulder that I overworked over the weekend because I was feeling pretty good at the time.
Yeah. Isn't it frustrating how it's like tipping scale, and you feel good, so you want to enjoy the things that you like to do, but then trying to balance enjoying what you like to do that maybe you can't do on those 8 days, but either taking the chance and saying, well, I'm going to enjoy today, but I know tomorrow I'm going to suffer, or how much can I do today to not throw tomorrow off because I have appointments tomorrow or things like that. It's a constant battle of what can I do? And it's like being on a tightrope where you got to try and stay upright and making all those decisions, based on things we can't even control, based on weather, based on if we go somewhere, how long it takes, different things like that. But it's definitely a challenge. I think one of the hardest challenges is just maintaining that and monitoring, each day as it comes.
So one other myth and misconception that I feel is that those that don't live with a chronic illness view those of us that do as kind of weak or not strong at all, which is definitely not the case. In fact, we're pretty big badasses to just live our lives on a daily basis while managing chronic illness that's part of our life.
Or just looking at us as though we're frail. And the one thing that I've learned just being in this community and for us starting this podcast and things is that we are beyond, that's not even close to the people that have chronic illness. We are strong, we are brave. And Tina said we're badasses. That is definitely how I would describe the people that live with a chronic illness every day. The people with chronic illness are some of the strongest people I've met and some of the strongest people I know because they've been through the battle and they battle every day and still wake up the next day and face it again.
Yep. It's not uncommon or not unusual for me to be somewhere out and about with a big smile on my face, but when it comes time for once you get back home, I'm crawling in bed crying. So
yeah.
You can definitely get out there and make it look like you're not suffering as much as you really are.
Yeah. I mean, who else but a spoonie can deal with all day pain or all day fatigue and still show up? So my hat's off to all of us that deal with the chronic pain because we all are just strong, beautiful people and we show up. So I hope that you take today to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am strong and I'm brave and I am doing this. I don't have a choice, but I'm doing this. We're also proud of everybody that's in this community as we hear you and we feel you and we are all badasses.
Yep, absolutely. Right? Yep, absolutely.
You're a badass, Tina.
And so are you, Rachel.
Oh, thank you.
We may need to do some sort of t-shirt, badass t-shirt.
There you go. We need to have a name of like our listeners. Like, I don't want to use the word spoonies because that's too general, but we need to come up with some name for our Spoonful of Strength community. So if anybody has an idea, and I'll post this on Instagram of what we can call our community, I'm going to throw it out there. But if you have anything that you can think of, put it in the comments and maybe we'll do a poll or something on Instagram to see what we like.
Yep. And maybe if we choose one of those, maybe we can send them a little free gift or something.
We can send you a little. That would be a great idea. So be looking for that.
Thank you all so much for tuning in today on our podcast. Thursday, we had the honor of interviewing Rocio all the way from Madrid, and she lives with Sjogren's syndrome, and so she will talk a bit about that journey, what it's like to maneuver through that disease and what she went through to get the diagnosis and such. So be sure to tune in on Thursday to hear our chat with Rocio. Everybody have a great rest of the week, and we will chat with you all later.